can hear me. We're not getting you on the monitor yet. There we are. All right. Do we have Julie of the Spokane campus? Julie?
Yeah, we're here. Hello.
Hello. Do we have Ted of the Spokane campus?
Present.
Do we have Naomi of the Spokane campus?
Which one? Which Naomi?
That was a yes, was it?
Which one? We have multiple Spokane Naomis.
Chator?
Here.
Did I say it right, Naomi?
Yeah.
Oh, good, good. Joanne of the Spokane campus? I take it that's a no.
Johanna or
Joanne
Is there a
Dotson.
Okay. No.
Joanne, no. Glenn Duncan, who had an interesting constituent concern of the Spokane campus? Oh, that's right, he said he couldn't be here today. Okay, Patricia Grossman, Spokane?
Present.
And Naomi Lundstrom is calling in, is that correct? Is she on the phone?
I'm here.
Very
This is
good.
Naomi, I'm here.
Great. Kay Myers, Spokane? Who often shows up here, but not yet. Janet of the Spokane campus? Evidently not. Kelly of the Spokane campus?
Yeah, Kerry Pazier's on the phone.
On the phone. Corey of the Spokane campus? So who just arrived?
Susan Finley?
Joanne, okay. Corey, Spokane? No? No Corey? Ahmed, Spokane? You do have a lot of representatives. Ahmed is not there today. Okay, Ben from Tri-Cities?
He's not here.
No? Robin from Tri-Cities?
Yes, ma'am. I'm here.
Yeah, I thought it must be you. Shamin, Vancouver? No. Susan Finley, Vancouver?
On the phone.
On the phone. Nick Yakima? Okay, we'll put it down as present in that case, in process. Brian Pierce?
I'm here from Pierce County.
Jose from Snoqualmie? No, I guess we have he's not going to be here today. Timothy Franklin from Franklin?
Yes, here.
Very good. Do we have a quorum?
We do. We're good.
Great. All right. So this is your call to order. And first is the approval of the minutes. Do I hear any changes to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Announcements. There are several information items we have. You no doubt saw that are there for your perusal at your convenience. And we will go from there on to my remarks. First, let me say, lest I forget, please respond RSVP to Kirk and Dr. Noel Schultz's kind, gracious invitation to our November 1st party reception at his house. Please don't forget. These are lovely events. The food is great. So please come, please respond. Okay, I thought I'd start out telling you just a little bit about what I've been doing. I make 4 reports to the Board of Regents a year. So we are connected to the Board of Regents. And you know, anything that you want them to hear about, consider communicating it to me. I mean, because this could be something of a dialogue too. So please voice your concerns in constituent concerns or directly to me. So I actually have posted my report to the board and the PowerPoint that went with it, or Gail posted it, at our website in the information for faculty section. So if you're interested in the conversation that goes on with the board, just take a look there. If you think there's something more we should be talking about, please let me know. Couple of things that I mentioned, just representative things. I mentioned in my last report the salary equity pilot study, and I mentioned the recent accomplishments of the Senate Executive. So you could also find out about those at our website. While I was in Vancouver, one of the things that the chair does is they go around and visit the various campuses and hear their concerns to bring it back to our group here. And so while I was there, I met with the Council of Faculty Representatives in Vancouver, and their primary concern was barriers to graduate education. They want to be more heavily involved in graduate education. And to that end, they want system-wide AMS courses, as many as they can get, and they want a suspension of any policies that limit graduate education in Vancouver, such as departmental residency requirements and restrictions on Vancouver faculty chairing committees for students in Pullman. It's one of the things that I would like to work on this year is that we be more one campus, that we begin to work and feel as if we really are one body with distributed locations. So personally, I'm very much in favor of graduate education in Vancouver, and I hope you all are too. I'm sure there are some issues and concerns. We're not voting on anything at this time. I also met with the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs and the Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, and they were concerned mainly about centralized WSU forms and regulations that eliminated Vancouver-specific forms that they thought addressed needs of the Vancouver campus. Okay, well, we also met with the president on 9/24, and just to tell you a little bit of what we talked about his work on this year's Commission on the Status of Women report, the ongoing work in his office. We also talked about what the Drive to 25 will mean to the life and career of the average faculty member. We also talked about salary gaps between faculty and administrators. So we are trying to address your concerns in these meetings. If you want to be heard, put it on the website. The president is also here to speak to you all about your concerns today and other things as well. So I will now turn the mic over to the president. If I can get it off me, that is. Here we go.
Well, good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to come and visit with the Senate and our colleagues across the state. I have a massive 3-slide presentation for you today, and the first slide's only a picture, so I do want to make sure that we have plenty of time for questions and things that have come up. Just before I start my kind of formal remarks, so I want to thank all of you for your service as faculty senators. All of you have lots of other things that you could be doing, working with students, working in research laboratories, all the different kind of projects and things that you all do, and we appreciate your role in this particular organization on the committees and as academic leaders on our campus is very, very important, and I do appreciate it very much. So thank you for doing that. So I'm going to start off, and if any of you are at the town halls, this is not a new graph, but I do want to really celebrate a little bit of some of our fiscal health recovery and where we are. And just very quickly, this is the same graph with one exception that I showed last year. And if you remember, on the axis there, we talk about annual revenue less expenses. Bottom line, you'd like to be above zero on that. Appropriately enough, we color it green. The last year that we were above zero, if you remember from last year, was FY 2013. Then we went through 4 consecutive fiscal years where we overspent our budget by between $25 and $30 million. So last year we announced and went around on campus that we were going to do a 2.5% spending reduction each particular year, and the goal was to move ourselves from a cumulative deficit at the end of the year of $30 million. The goal was to cut $10 million off of that this next fiscal year to be at 20, then the next fiscal year to do another 10, and then finally after 3 years be back to zero or a little bit in the black. And what you can see on the graph here is the shaded part of the red is our target, and where we actually finished the year was about $7.2 million in the hole. So essentially we made a $22 million positive difference in our revenues and expenditures this last year. A lot of people really rolled up their sleeves, did a lot to make this happen. Faculty and staff really worked together to minimize impacts on our students. And I never thought that we would see this kind of progress in 1 year. So what that means now is as we continue to watch our spending, next year we should be back in the black as a university for the first time in 5 years. And so that's really, we're working really hard to get there. I would also remind everybody that when we talk about spending reduction, sometimes we talk about budget cuts. What that means is the central administration comes in, sweeps dollars. We come and we take a 2% cut or whatever. We harvest those dollars and apply them in some form or fashion. Just a reminder, this time, everybody kept their money. So people didn't spend as much, but that was not harvested and taken anywhere else. So if it was in engineering, arts and sciences, or education, those dollars remain in that particular college. It's just we're asking people to kind of build up reserves. So where do we go from here? One of the things the Fiscal Health Committee is going to be working on is a draft proposal that will come out to campus for dialogue and discussion. And what we want to do is have a policy that every major unit at the college and VP level would need to have some set aside reserve funds that would be a certain percentage range of their budget. I don't know what those dollars, that percentages need to look like, but we'd ask people to sort of manage in that particular way moving forward. Having those set aside dollars at the college and vice presidential level means that, you know, when you have sometimes major purchases or things or new initiatives they have to do, you've got a savings account there to be able to go and tap into that. It also means then, though, that's kind of one-time money, and what you have to do is you deplete that, then there would be an expectation of people replenishing that, again, at the college and departmental and VP level. So the bottom line here is I think we made outstanding and exceptional progress in 1 year. Trust me, nobody likes working under this kind of fiscally constrained environment, but we've got to put ourselves back in a position so that we can invest the dollars in the things that we need to, the projects, faculty, staff salaries, all the different kinds of things that are important to us as a university community. My last and final slide is just a few other talking points I wanted to hit on before going to Q&A. The first is, you know, one of the things that I think a president and provost needs to do is obviously come and visit on a regular basis with a faculty senate, with our student senate, with our graduate student senate, a lot of our shared governance groups. But my experience has also been that if you're not careful, you wind up doing an open forum or town hall, and you do one somewhere centrally on campus. You have about 100 people show up. Half of them will be administrators that feel they got to come because their boss is speaking. And then you got a few other people out there. And then you can publicize and say, hey, you know, we did this open forum and answered questions. And if you really look at it, you say you don't really reach a lot of people that way. I have found by going and doing it at the college and VP level and going out to where people are as opposed to asking them necessarily always come somewhere else, that you reach a lot larger audience, and people are willing to walk down the hall sometimes and go to something for 45 minutes or an hour, that if you have to walk all the way across campus, it just, you got other more important things to do. So what that means, the good news is we get a chance to interact with a lot of people, but we actually do 19 separate town hall meetings. And this year we added one with intercollegiate athletics because some of the financial challenges of the university, some of the successes that we have, some of the things that you all do as faculty and staff, we never present to our coaches and all the employees and people that work in intercollegiate athletics. So we added that one this year. We also do one at every single campus. And so anyway, these have gone really well. We've had some very direct and pointed questions, and that's the reason that you do this. But I appreciate the fact that that many people came out, showed up, and brought really good questions. Now, one of the challenges we always have is that sometimes our colleagues are worried if they ask a question that can come across as maybe very direct or pointed, that somehow there could be retribution, or their colleagues won't like it, or the president's going to get them fired, or whatever kinds of things you might hear. So this year we went to a format. That's kind of weird. We went to a format where we had these little cards that were passed out and people could write things on, and we collected that. It's been okay. One of the things, talking to the Senate Executive Committee, that we are really considering doing is next year, using the Senate website, we've got all the different, where the town halls are going to be, and ask people to submit questions electronically ahead of time that then are harvested, and we can use those as part of the Q&A. So the second thing is strategic planning. We're due up to do a university strategic plan, and one of the key things, and talking to a lot of folks on campus, and many of you in the room may have been involved in the last strategic plan that was done. One of the challenges, I think, was I don't feel we necessarily had campus-wide dialogue and input on what types of things are important for WSU to be thinking about as we do our next plan. And so one of the things that we're doing is, instead of rushing to try and get something done in 6 to 7 months, really start a little bit with a blank sheet of paper and spend 6 months engaging the campus in dialogue around strategic planning, where we need to be. Not let's revise our mission and vision statement, but just answering a couple questions in small groups and things like that. We are going to have a person from the outside that'll come in and help us structure some parts of it. And as you all know, we've done lots of planning on this campus. We have a strategic plan. We've got research stuff that we've done on kind of key research areas for the university. We got the Drive to 25. You know, you go through, there's lots of stuff. There's no reason to redo all that stuff. We got to find a way to integrate it together. And the time that we'll take to engage our campus community on what's important will mean that there's buy-in at the end, and everybody doesn't go, well, somebody gave us a baked plan and sort of said, you know, nibble around the edges a little bit, as opposed to what is it that's key and for us looking forward. So Erica Austin will be leading this effort out of the Provost's office. I think it's very, very important that we've got an academic leader that is leading some of our strategic planning things. And so please look for opportunities to be involved and engaged. We're going to ask for the campus community to be involved and engaged, and for you all as our faculty leaders across campus to encourage your colleagues to be engaged in our process. Now, that being said, we also want to make it so this isn't super time-consuming for faculty, but when those things come out, whether it's a web page, a meeting, commenting, whatever, instead of, you know, somebody grousing at you, well, why are they doing this? You know, say, hey, how about you put some comments out there, or let us know what you think. So look for that. Enrollment growth and enrollment planning. One of the things we've talked about in the town halls is, you know, what do we want our enrollment to look like at Washington State University in the future? And so one of the working numbers that we're using, by working numbers, it's a big round number. Okay, I want to make that clear. We're using as a model, what would a 40,000 student Washington State University look like in 2028? And you say, why 40,000? Why not 45? Why not 35? You know, whatever. What we want to do is pick a number, and this doesn't necessarily have to be the number, but start doing some calculations and say, okay, if we're going to be that number of students, how many would we have in Pullman? How many would we have in Vancouver? If you've got that number of students, how many faculty do we need to do the things that we'd like to? How many staff? What does that do for buildings and infrastructure and all that? Because what we don't want to do is in a year or two go, okay, we're going to go on some big growth thing, and guess what? We're going to use that money to hire faculty. And then we start growing, and you all come back and say, well, my department doesn't look any different at all. We've added a bunch of students, and we have not seen any new resources coming in. At that particular point, you're like, somebody's just consuming all these resources. So by picking a number and doing some modeling work, what we want to be able to do is sort of say, hey, if we add students, where will the dollars go? What is it going to look like? And what are the implications of WSU getting larger? Now you say, well, why? Maybe we don't need to be larger. Maybe we need to be smaller. If you look at the state of Washington demographics, they estimate, some of the estimates I've seen, that the state will grow by 1 million people in the next decade. There's going to be a lot of students in the state looking for public higher education. And so I think University of Washington, us, and the regionals are all going to have to grow simply to accommodate a growing population in our state that's going to be very interested and dedicated to higher education. The last thing I'll say about this too is this is not going to be done in some smoke-filled room in French admin with, you know, here's what it is, and you go, well, gee, I thought there was going to be some dialogue on this. Part of strategic planning is certainly enrollment, but we want this to be a campus-wide conversation, and when the provost comes and talks to you, Dan will also is the one that this is really kind of in his shop to be leading this effort on dialogue and discussion on our campus. One of the other things that came up in the last year or two was there's a bill that wanders around the Washington legislature about adding a faculty regent onto the regents at Washington State University and the University of Washington. Some years it gets a little more traction, some years it doesn't, but with the Senate Executive Committee we had some dialogue about, well, let's not worry about the bill. Wouldn't there be some value to making sure that we had a faculty member that was actively engaged with the regents during regents meetings, in addition to what the chair does in terms of their reports to the regents. So this year we have a trial period that what we're going to do is Judy is the past chair, sorry, I thought it was president when I was typing in, the past chair serves as an ex officio regent. And what that means by ex officio regent is the person's involved in all the dialogue, discussions, committee work, all that stuff. The person doesn't have a vote, but that's the only thing that the person doesn't have. Now you can say, well, Kirk, that doesn't really mean much. That means somebody spent a lot of time and they don't really get to help in decisions. Most of the regents' votes are 9-0 and 8-1. We don't have a lot of things where the vote is super controversial. What's important is that we have the right voices in the room when we're discussing things and we're talking about things. And in our first meeting, I think Judy did a great job, several places, really doing in a committee meeting or whatever, representing the faculty voice. So we're going to try it out this year, see how it works. I want to make sure it works for Judy and the Senate. I want to make sure it works for the regents and everybody feels good about it. But so far, I would say after one meeting, it's been really, really good, and I'm looking forward to continuing to do this. I spent some time today on the Faculty Senate website. I know we've worked with Greg and others to get this set up. I think it looks fantastic. It's much more user-friendly. And one of the things that I like is the constituent concerns section. So what happened is there's 5 or 6 constituent concerns. I think even a new one about faculty and students not reading email or something I saw on there right before I walked in. But what we're trying to do is we're going to set up a mechanism so that we make sure we answer those in writing. I don't, it's no problem having somebody come and do it verbally, but I think to have really do this well, as Greg or Jeanette or whoever sends them to us, they're not all answerable by the president. And so what happens is we have to distribute those out to campus, get answers for them, write them in, and then we'll post them up on the website. And so the idea is that way, no matter what the constituent concern is, there's something in writing. And I'm going to work within my office to make sure we that somebody's always responsible to get that done in a timely fashion. But I really think that's a really excellent new thing, and I'm glad we're using that sort of technology. And then finally, one of the things that I think that we need to continue to have dialogue about, and this is more the Senate than the President, is the online educational space continues to evolve and change a lot. And I still think we have we have a lot of hoops that we jump through sometimes for when a faculty, you all, in a department with an approved degree program already, vote to go online. To me, at some point, it should maybe need dean's approval and the faculty senate say, yeah, that sounds fine. It's already a degree program we've had for a long time. I think we need to find ways to speed this up. And speed it up, not because I've got some list of programs I think we ought to do. This has got to be faculty driven. But I think when the early days of online education, there was still a lot of roughness around the edges. Today, this is a very polished unit. Many of you probably participate in online, or your departments do. And I just think this needs to be the kind of thing that if a department's ready to go, and it's an existing degree program with existing approved curriculum, we should be able to move that along really, really quickly. And frankly, you all have so many things to do that any of this stuff that we can find to streamline a little bit, I think allows you to work on bigger ticket items like new degree programs and stuff like that. So not trying to get in the weeds here, but this is something when Dave Soleil and I talk about as we move more degree programs online, sometimes the approval process seems longer than it maybe needs to be. So I just love this to be something we might be able to talk about. So I'm going to stop there. Like I said, I didn't want to redo my town hall talk that many of you have seen or will see there. And I would love to take whatever time I have remaining to just answer questions or concerns that any of you might have, or things you've heard from your constituents that you at least want to make sure you bring to my attention. So thank you. Questions? Here, or I'll try and watch the monitors too if there's anybody who has something at one of the other locations. Yes?
So I'm Michael Cleveland in the Department of Human Development in Connors. Thanks for being here today. And I have a constituent concern that I welcome the opportunity to present to you. I appreciate your willingness to listen to it. I've already logged it onto the system.
Okay.
Still waiting for approval. I think to get approved, but it seems like a great opportunity to express it to you here in person and maybe get a little bit of response from you, just kind of see your response. It actually is a concern that the body here started to discuss last year regarding apparent growth in administrative positions relative to educational positions. So I just kind of will try to paraphrase a little bit of the letter here that I have posted on the Faculty Senate website. It actually references the figure that you showed in the second slide. The bottom of that figure shows the growth in FTE, but as my constituent points out, this one graph conflates the numbers of classified AP and faculty employees into one figure. And in the spirit of fiscal health and transparency, it would be important to our WCU community to know the growth of each of these positions separately over the past several years. We grew from 4,537 employee FTE in fiscal year 2013 to 5,281 in 2017. You probably have updated numbers there. How many of these new 744 positions were faculty? How many were administration? Has faculty FTE increased at the same rate of student FTE? And finally, how can we get these numbers and make them easily accessible to our WCU community? As I mentioned, I think we brought this up last year, and I wasn't sure how to respond to my constituents in terms of resolution of that concern. I know there's probably an ongoing discussion, but I'd be interested to know your response.
Yeah, so I don't know the exact numbers, and me
Of course,
just
yeah,
starting to quote things, you ought to worry if I did know them. But we'll provide that breakdown to you, and we'll make sure we give it to Greg and Jeanette and stuff like that so that we can take that number and everybody can see each of the categories. I think there's a couple things, though, that I think that we sometimes do that I think are not helpful to ourselves. One is we separate people into two buckets. I think you got to separate them into more. It's like faculty and anybody else that's hired as administration, which includes staff members doing advising of students and things like that. So to me, sometimes when people talk about administrative bloat or what they're talking about is at the executive level or things like that. So to me, I think you got to break it down a little bit into, faculty. Maybe when we talk about administrative staff, sometimes people think about that different than how many offices are you filling French admin with, six-figure administrators. So what I'll do is I'll provide just a breakdown of that into the major bucket categories. And we're happy to publicize that and put out those graphs so everybody can see it. And then if people have specific concerns, I want to certainly address those. I believe, from looking at the data, and I don't know if Dan is here, but he had some graphs last year. I think the biggest growth was what I would call professional staff, advisors and things like that. I think that's where you're seeing, not just advisors, it's all kinds of people across campus. I think that's where the largest growth curve occurred there. But I want to give specific numbers and graphs so people can see that. That's a great question.
And those might be available on your website or someplace that.
Yeah, we'll make it either on our website, the Fiscal Health website. I think since you're asking it and logging it as a question, we'll want to either put a direct web link to exactly where the data is, or if it's not available currently like that, we'll provide it, put it there. But that's the kind of thing that people are going to want to see on an annual basis. So,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yes.
Matt Carroll from SOE and Connors. Again, thank you very much for being here with us today. I'm speaking both as a senator and as a former legislative rep of the Senate in Olympia back during the Rollins years. And it struck me then, and it still strikes me today, that one of the most important decisions you and your vice presidents make each year is the legislative ask, what you decide to ask the legislature for. And to my knowledge, there has never been a direct faculty voice in the room when you and your predecessors are making those key decisions. I'm wondering if you would be open to having either the past president or perhaps the current faculty legislative rep, who happens to be an SOE colleague of mine now, in the room when you're deliberating about what to ask the legislature for and, of course, what to not ask them for. Would you be open to that sort of an
Sure.
involvement with a representative of the faculty?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that. I think people find it more frustrating than they do anything else, not because I'm in the room, but just in general, that we have a lot of needs and you got to focus down. And I would say that there's two major things we've asked the legislature for in this upcoming session in terms of operating funds. The first is continued support for the medical school. We got to pay for years 3 and 4. And the campus may not have realized this or not. It doesn't matter. It was before my time. When we went for the medical school, that basically became our #1 ask for 3 biennial budgets. I mean, so you start looking at that, that's 6 years and those kind of things. And so that's been our #1 kind of ask. The second priority is we asked for a 4% salary increase pool for faculty and staff each year of the biennium. That's also what the University of Washington did, and we work closely with UW to make sure that the two of us are the same place with what we're asking for salary-wise. Not because we don't need more or anything like that, but it's just stronger when your two large public research universities are going with a unified ask on what we need to do for salaries. But the immaterial of that, I'm happy to have faculty senate involvement, engagement in those decisions.
An additional value of that is that person then comes back to the faculty and lays out the dilemmas that you face that perhaps they don't fully understand.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it would be a beneficial addition, I think, in both directions.
Yep, sounds good. I'm happy to do that. Yeah.
Rob Crossler, College of Business. A question came up during our town hall that wasn't asked, so I had a couple people mention this. And during the town hall, the Drive to 25, we were talking about increased graduation rates of doctoral students, and the need to have more tenure track faculty as a resource to be able to move that along. And you also, in the same presentation, talked about where money comes from, through tuition, not so much from the state as it used to be. And kind of the question was raised of do you see the money coming from to actually be able to increase tenure track faculty lines?
Yeah, that's where we want to do some of the modeling study on growth. If we grow our student population, that is where I believe we're going to have to get the dollars to grow faculty lines. And so if you sort of say, what other choices are there, Kirk? Maybe we'd love to stay 31.5 in terms of enrollment and grow faculty lines. What are you going to do? Well, you only have a certain number of financial options available to you. Roughly 2/3 of the money we get to spend on things like that comes from tuition. About 1/3 comes from the state. 15 years ago, it would have been reversed to that. The bottom line is we only have a few mechanisms to do that, and one is growth. And so what I want to do, though, is it's easy to say that, right? It'll just grow, and manna's going to come from heaven, and everybody's going to get what they want. We should be able to do a pretty good job of modeling that. You can assume a couple % tuition increase, and you add these students. How much money does that generate? And if you start actually looking, can you do that? And guess what? It's not just faculty colleagues. For some units, it might be assistantships. It's startup. It's staff support, because you can't just double the number of faculty in a department or add 10 or 15% without additional staff support. And many of you will probably tell me you're not in terrific facilities, and there's facilities needs. So my issue here is, let's model that out. There's a lot of predictability there. Let's sort of see how it pencils out, and that's got to be part of our any kind of growth plan. But that's the only place I see. Philanthropy, I think we can raise a lot of money to help existing faculty be more successful with endowments and stuff, but in terms of major endowments big enough to endow faculty lines all by themselves, I think that's probably a bit of a long shot, and I don't think that's where we would be right now. So that's really, in my mind, the only income stream. Now, we can also look at, when we talk about enrollment, distance education, and your college in particular has been very effective at using distance education to generate revenue to do other kinds of things. And so I think we have to look really broadly, and we talk about enrollment. It doesn't always have to be 18 to 22-year-old freshmen sitting in our classes. It doesn't have to be the only way we grow enrollment. So,
Thank you.
thanks. Maybe time for one more. I don't want to screw up your timing for the rest of the day. Save some of those good questions for Dan. Anybody online have a question that I can answer? Okay. Well, once again.
There's one in Spokane.
Okay. I heard a
Hi.
voice from above. Go ahead.
This is Joanne Dodson. This has been brought up before, I believe, at the Spokane Town Hall. I don't know if it's a question that can be answered simply, but there's an ongoing concern, especially as we increase diversity, is to assure consistency of resources for students on campus to campus. ESL is one of them, but also the availability of tutors. In some places they're still paid for by student fees, other places that's not the case. So anything we can do to assure that consistency and support of students no matter where they are.
So I agree, and I think as we look at WSU increasingly as a system of 5 physical campuses in our global campus, that there are going to be some of our campuses that have more resources than others, and the question is, how do we sometimes make those resources available system-wide? There's enrollment constraints in Spokane as professional schools, and there's only so much we can do with fees there, as an example, to provide some of the same dollars that you might be able to find in Pullman. My question is, can we start looking at using some of our resources in Pullman on campuses that may not have some of that through technology and other types of things? So believe it or not, we don't have I know this will be shocking, we don't have a consistent way that we actually budget our other campus locations. Tri-Cities and Vancouver are really one model. Spokane's completely different. Everett is completely different yet again, and the global campus is a 4th different economic model. So part of it is what might work to get new services or something in Tri-Cities or in Vancouver may not work in Spokane. So the bottom line is it's complex, and as we look at our system issues, this is one that we've got to figure out a good way to solve, and I think technology is going to be part of the way we're going to have to do that. All right, folks, once again, thank you so much. Thanks for your service. I appreciate the time. I look forward to addressing the constituent concerns as they come in, and thank you for all you do for WSU. Go Cougs. Thanks.
Thank you so much for your availability, Kirk. I want to say, too, that he's really good at raising money. He really believes in transparency. He is genuinely open, and he wants to talk. And as far as I'm concerned, those are stellar qualities in an administrator.
Thank you. Maybe not the talking part.
Let's see. I can't see your name so well, but Senator Michael up there, I wanted to mention to you, I think Kirk did too, but that the provost, who is now here and who will talk to you later in the session, actually did a study on your question last year. And so if you repeat it a bit for him, I think he can probably well address it. Yes, now we have remarks from our chair-elect, Greg Crouch.
I won't make a habit of this, I promise. Gail wanted me to bring up the fact that several have asked for Outlook calendar invites for the Faculty Senate. And I just wanted to say that since not everybody uses Outlook, we have iCal, which is, if you go to the calendar site on the Senate, you can click it, it downloads, and it'll add to your Outlook or Mac Mail or whatever you use automatically. I also wanted to say that we're, again, to try and direct you to the executive blog. We have a listing from Global Campus on video conference standards. And the concern there is, again, if we grow globally, if we grow in our online classes, a lot of those rely on academic media services, video conferencing. The set of standards that is linked on that webpage represents feedback from only 16% of faculty that were surveyed. So now's your time to look at what that report says, to read it carefully, and to provide feedback that can help shape the standards under which classrooms will be built out to support global students. President Schultz went in over the constituent concern and how his office graciously agreed to collect those concerns, distribute them, and then send them back so we can post them, with the idea that we'll have a permanent record in writing that's searchable of the kinds of concerns, especially the important ones. I wanted to point out that we now have the voting on the concerns enabled. So there is a little thumbs up or thumbs down that you can do. So the idea is, if the concern is something that a lot of you are interested in, you can vote up that concern. I don't know if that's going to be a useful feature, but we wanted to try and separate some concerns that anyway, you will play with it. We'll see how it goes. Let's see. The other thing, I guess, which was kind of a surprise, and it shouldn't have been, is the Senate is asked to help staff several presidential committees. We have a couple of committees that I am struggling with, and I'm hopeful that you might be able to help. We have a University Grades Appeal Committee. We have 5 openings on that committee, and the only requirement for the service on that committee is the committee member be a faculty member who is tenured, so associate professor and full professor. So if you are willing to serve on University Grade Appeals, or you know someone that is willing to serve on University Grade Appeals, please email me. The other is a committee that Jeanette is chairing, which is the Honorary Doctoral Degree Committee. I need a representative at any rank, faculty rank, from the Voiland School. So, because the constituency requires broad representation, and every other position is full. So if you know anybody or you can volunteer to do that, that would be very helpful. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Greg. All right, on with the business of the meeting. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is accepted. We'll move on to action items. Recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve Graduate Major Change Bulletin number 1. Is Doug or Alex here?
Present.
So if you have any questions, you can direct them at Alex, is that right?
Yeah.
Doug. Sorry. Action items, I believe, call for a vote. So all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. The motion is approved. Recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve Undergraduate Major Change Bulletin number 2. Casey is here. I see Casey up there. If you have any questions on this item. Hearing none, we move to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion is approved. Number 3, recommendation from Academic Affairs to approve UCOR Bulletin Number 1. Again, Casey is here if you have any questions. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. The motion is approved. Recommendation from Academic Affairs Committee to approve the proposal to extend American Indian Studies, the American Indian Studies Certificate to the global campus. Again, Casey can answer your questions, if there are any. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. And last of the action items, recommendation from the steering committee to approve the faculty senate committees, which we restaffed, which I largely restaffed with some help from Greg this summer. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Thank you. Okay, on to the discussion items. Recommendation from Graduate Studies to approve Graduate Major Change Bulletin Number 2. And again, Doug is here if you have any questions. Is there any discussion? Next item, recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve revised PhD materials, material science and engineering. And again, Doug is here if you have any questions or concerns. Next, recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve the new prefix program upgrade of integrated physiology and neuroscience and biomedical physiology and technology. Again, address your questions to Doug. Hearing none. Next item, recommendations from Graduate Studies to approve revised graduate certificate systems in engineering management. Next, recommendation from Academic Affairs to approve undergraduate major change bulletin 3. And Casey is here to answer questions. Recommendation from Academic Affairs to approve the revision of Rules 80 and 81, scheduling all common examinations and scheduling out-of-class examinations. Any concerns or questions? Moving on. Recommendation from Professional Health Sciences to approve a Professional Health Sciences Major Change Bulletin Number 1. And do we have John here to address concerns? Very good. Next, recommendations from Professional Health Sciences to approve proposal to extend the final grade deadline for the ESF-COM. Hearing no concerns, we can now move on to constituent concerns. And Dan was going to field your constituent concerns.
He went back to his office to get his laptop.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe then we should begin our constituent concerns. Well, let me just take a moment then to say, next time we will be hearing from Michael Berger, who is the head of the faculty organization at the Vancouver campus. And so again, I'm hoping that we will come to understand the various campuses better and feel more that we are one unit. So he's coming to help you see things from the perspective of the Vancouver campus. And if you have any questions for him, if there's something that you would particularly like him to talk about, if you could email me, then I will forewarn him, and he will craft his talk to your specific interests and concerns. My email address is on the website. All right, well, I suppose we should just go on with the constituent concerns then. Are there any constituent concerns today?
I have one. This is Julie Akers in Spokane.
Please.
One that came up during the Professional Health Sciences Committee meeting had to do with the new requirements when going through the catalog requirements of online versus a correspondence course, and wanting to just hope we can get clarity on that of as we're reviewing new courses. We know that we have to measure that to the new standard, but there's not a lot of clarity on courses that are already in the catalog that have been previously approved that may not meet the, it had to do with whether it's considered online or correspondence, which could affect federal financial aid for those courses, and what that would mean for courses that are already on the books. And so hoping at some point we can get some information. That was a concern, especially when it comes to elective courses.
So what you're looking for, let me rephrase to make sure I understand, is the difference between distance courses and correspondence courses. Is that correct? Or would you rephrase?
Courses that are considered an online course versus correspondence, which we were told recently changed in August, what qualified for federal student loans and what didn't. And so how that changed and whether we approve correspondence courses ongoing may be affected, and retrospectively courses that are already being available to students that may originally were approved as online, but they might fall under the new definition of correspondence. What happens to those courses that, are they grandfathered in? Do we have to review previously approved courses? What's our next step there?
Great. Please do put that concern on the website, because try as I do to listen, I'm not going to get it exactly the way you want it. But if you put it on the website in your words, then we will. And we'll try to get you some clarification on that. I do know that Global Campus, when they have a hand in making courses, clearly distinguish their courses from correspondence courses. And to my knowledge, the main difference is has to be lots of interaction online. You know, group interaction, group discussions, meeting with professors in our online courses, whereas that would not characterize a correspondence course. And so, but your question is also about what is on the books. If there are correspondence courses on the books, what happens to them? All right.
Because we were told there was a recent change in August as to whether students would qualify for federal student loans for correspondence courses under that definition, that's a recent change. And so there may be potentially no more approval of correspondence courses because they wouldn't qualify for student loans. And then how do we look retrospectively at courses that are already on the books that would fit that new definition?
Well, our provost has just returned to the meeting, and if you would like to come down here, Dan, perhaps you can address this concern.
Okay.
If not, we will certainly get you the information. But
Loan related?
well, it's the difference between global online courses and correspondence courses, and the difficulty in getting student loans and that sort of thing for correspondence courses, and what's going to happen to the correspondence courses. Do we need to review them and do something with them?
Right. Well, I can't answer that
specifically to whatever the issue that's being raised. I mean, correspondence courses are being, if you will, targeted by the Department of Education, and especially about how their eligibility around federal financial assistance, probably for good reason, because they're a favorite arm of the for-profit sector, and there's been a lot of abuse in that sector. Yeah, I think once we understand the exact provisions that are going to come out of DOE, then we will have to relook at those. We don't have an enormous number of correspondence courses, but we probably will have to, reassess and perhaps repackage and move those over to the global campus or over to online. They're part of the global campus for the most part. That's about all I can say. It's a good I don't really know a response, I understand.
So, please.
Yeah.
So thank you for being here and willing to, I guess, a very impromptu discussion, but the question I have relates to a constituent concern that was raised, and I brought it up to President Schultz because coincidentally the graph that he showed was referenced in my constituent's concern,
right?
Which is a topic that maybe you've heard is one that we've been discussing for the past year or so in the Faculty Senate regarding apparent growth in administrative positions.
Mm-hmm.
And basically in that chart that the president showed, which I think has been updated since my constituent was able to find that data, shows an apparent growth in FTE over time, but it combines the positions of classified AP and faculty positions into one category. And so my constituent just would like to know, how can we, in the spirit of transparency, have access to these numbers and these data so that we can get a more finer grained breakdown of the growth for various positions at the university across.
Yeah, and I actually brought my computer, but I haven't been able to open it. But I have done that analysis. Actually, I shared it with all the department chairs at their workshop last spring. We've done it on FTE and dollar basis, and you really have to do it on dollar basis because, comparing AP positions with administrative positions or even faculty positions isn't really a fair comparison. So I have that data. I'd be happy to forward it on to your leadership team. I've done it over about a 15-year time period. It's a good question, and one of my concerns to be, and this came up last year when I spoke. I think it came from up in that corner up there. And I think we really have to look at this issue because one of the byproducts of having a system like ours, is that we have, administrative expenses on all these campuses, and I think we really have to look at those hard because when the administrative expenses are reported, and that was a good catch by somebody who referenced this report, and I went back to it, and I think when we report by system, we report as a system rather than by campus. It does increase our total administrative percentage, if you will, of our, the percentage of budget allocated to administrative. So I'll gladly share that. I've got it on an FTE basis. I've got it on a dollar basis. I've got it for about 15 years. The percentage to administration is very small in total, right? But nonetheless, we can look at the increase in that, and I think it's, and it shows that there's been an increase. Now, one of the things that's happened realistically is when I was president, we held a lot of positions open, and that created, kind of a wave of new hiring in administration, right? Because I think we were operating principally with interims. But that's another issue as well. But yeah, I'll give them the spreadsheets, and if they want me to come back and explain them, I can. Okay. Since I'm up here, can am I doing constituent concerns now, or what? Okay, Brandon.
Well, no, I was just going to tell you that the graph that you showed us when you came back in February is up in the resources for senators.
Okay.
Still, so that
Does it have that data in there?
Yeah, it has the whole breakdown by administration, tenure track.
Oh,
non-tenure
okay,
track.
cool.
That one that you showed
Okay.
us, and so that's in the resources available to us.
Okay.
Right now.
So that's in information for
Mhm.
Wow.
information for
Yeah, yeah.
A, I'm impressed that you have it up there. B, I'm impressed I delivered it. And C, I'm impressed he found it. So I wanted to address one of the concerns, if I could, that was expressed last time around, and I don't have my notes, but I'll try to freelance it here, around the request for academic information. Because I did take that back to Thad Hathaway. He's the guy that directs athletic academic advising. The first thing I would say is, athletic academic advising, those are professional licensed advisors. They are just like the advisors in your departments, and they have the student athletes' goodwill and academic progress absolutely, as the top priority. The consent form that was referenced is voluntary. Thad said nobody has questioned about signing that over the 15 years that he's worked. The challenge is that for students, athletes to be NCAA eligible and for us to monitor that, you have to have access to their academic information. So that is the principal reason for that consent form. The students receive the form and they each sit down with individually with academic compliance and or go through all of the academic rules and regulations, including what that form would be used for and what information they're going to access. They are very helpful. Obviously, those reports are very helpful. I think the letter is the same letter that was sent out for 10 years, basically. I think there was the point about the response rate that probably hit a nerve, and I can appreciate that. I don't think it was intended by Thad to, say the faculty aren't cooperating or whatever. He just was trying to communicate the importance. I can gladly have Thad meet with a subcommittee or the whole Senate or whomever if this is an important topic. They do a great job. I don't know if you know this, but we have, the student athletes' grade point average is higher than the student body. They're run around a 3.0 on the average. We are second in the Pac-12 in graduation rate, and we have, I believe, now 30 students in the Honors College who are student athletes. So we're pretty proud of that relationship. It represents a good chunk of our student body when you add them all up. There's over 500 of those student athletes, and that's not insignificant when you think about our undergraduate student body on Pullman. That's over 5% of our student body. So those reports are very important for them, really, to make sure the students are progressing, and if they have if we can identify and intervene quickly, and most importantly in the months and the semester in which they're participating in their respective sports. So it's particularly important for a fall athlete for them really to monitor that and make sure they're going to class, being successful, and progressing. I don't know if I can add to that. Yes,
So
Robert.
I was the one who brought that constituent
Sure.
concern, and
Yeah.
great job answering it. That's very helpful, and I'll take it back to my constituents and share with them. One part that was brought up that you didn't address is a similar process available for non-athletes? Because that was another
Yeah.
issue, is why just
Right.
athletes, and why
Right.
not first-generation college students?
Right.
Why not,
Right.
other people who might be in need
Right.
of catching them before they...
Right, and we do a semester, mid-semester for our new students and our transfer students. There are groups, for example, some of our programs that are aligned or are serving first gens or serving particularly minority groups. They do a similar, they monitor in a similar way. And we are working actually on a more sophisticated early alert system than that, using our new EAB product that we have, the Student Success Campus product. So we are working on a product that's pretty sophisticated in terms of the analytics that can forecast, if you will, as we move along the semester, right? Because that's been successful at some other institutions that have used this product. So it's a great question. I mean, obviously, student athletes have a lot of wraparound services, if you will. We can debate that, I guess, but I think the important thing is that they're great representatives of our university, and I don't know how many of you, it would be really great, and I told Pat, it would be really great to have a conversation about kind of what the average life, or average day in the life of a student athlete is. They allocate enormous amounts of time, much more than we could ever imagine. Some of you have them in class and things like that and kind of know this, but it would be good for all of our faculty to know a little bit more about that. It is a huge commitment on their part. They're great, for the most part, they're really great students, great kids. Yeah. There was another one last time on the Access Center, and that's a really good question, right? And actually it's such an important issue. We actually had the Access Center and OEO with the deans just 2 weeks ago to try to talk about how we're going to push out that educational and training around that issue. That is perhaps the greatest legal risk the university has, believe it or not. And we need to make sure faculty know, what's available to them and to the students, and what the role, what the responsibilities of the student are in this relationship as well. We will be getting some more materials out there. I really appreciated that concern. This is becoming, as we all know, more and more the new normal, if you will. And we want to make sure that we accommodate our students correctly. I will say that one of the greatest challenges we have is well-meaning faculty not following the rules, right? So trying to, accommodate as they think would fit the case. And that can cause us, when we get into legal issues, that's often the problem, right? It's not faculty not caring or not wanting to do the right thing. It's that they tried to do something and they didn't involve the Access Center, and that can create enormous problems for us and for the students and for the faculty member. Others? So those were really great constituent concerns. And so I have 2 pieces of homework, right? The first question and then it sounds like the other questions out there. So the answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that we're really fortunate in the open relationship we have with our president and our provost, and let's cultivate it. All right. I I think that's all the business for today, so I'm going to call for adjournment. Goodbye.